Hey everyone, welcome back to Set Sail with Grace Harbor. Well, today is July 3rd, and if you're new to our channel, my name is David. And today we're going to continue in our look into the Old Testament, specifically the book of 2 Kings and chapters 5 through 8. So if you're looking for stories about incredible miracles, surprising mercy, and the powerful work of God, well, you've come to the right place. We're going to cover these 4 chapters and focus on some of the main points. So let's jump in. We start in 2 Kings in chapter 5 with an amazing story about a Syrian commander named Naaman. Now, Naaman is a great man and highly respected, but he has a problem. He's a leper. And a young Israelite slave girl that was taken captive from Israel tells Naaman's wife that there's a prophet in Samaria that can heal him. Well, Naaman obtains permission and a letter of instruction from his king, and it's written to the king of Israel. And at first, the king of Israel reacts to this letter as though it's a declaration of war, and he tears his clothes and he laments over it. But Elisha the prophet, he hears about the king's reaction to the letter, and he assures him, hey, this isn't a ruse to conquer Israel. So Naaman journeys to see Elisha the prophet. Now Elisha, without even coming out to greet him, sends a messenger telling Naaman, go wash 7 times in the river Jordan. Well, Naaman, he's furious. He expected some grand display and some impressive ritual. And he scoffs and he says, the rivers in Damascus are better than these. But the servants wisely persuade him to humble himself and follow Elisha's instructions. After all, what do you have to lose? Well, guess what? He dips 7 times and his skin is restored like that of a young boy. The main point here is the ways of God, they're not our ways. Humility and simple obedience to his word are often the way to incredible blessings. Naaman returns home to Elisha and professes his faith in the God of Israel and offers Elisha gifts, which Elisha refuses. However, his servant Gehazi, he greedily chased after Naaman and lies to get some of the gifts. And as a result, Gehazi is struck with Naaman's leprosy. This was due to the lack of integrity and his greedy desires. Moving on to 2 Kings chapter 6, we see Elisha performing even more incredible miracles. First, he makes an axe float on the water. Now, seemingly that's a small miracle, but it demonstrates God's power even over the simplest laws of physics and providing for his disciples. But the chapter quickly turns and shifts to the ongoing conflict of Israel and Aram, which is Syria. The king of Aram is consistently frustrated because Elisha keeps revealing his battle plans to the king of Israel. So the king sends a vast army to Dothan to capture Elisha. Elisha's servant is terrified when he sees the army around them. But Elisha prays, and God opens the servant's eyes, and he sees a mountain full of horses and chariots all around them. God's protection is far greater than any earthly army. Elisha prays for the Aramean army to be blinded, and they are, and he leads them to Samaria instead of killing them, and the king of Israel, on Elisha's advice, feeds them and sends them home. Well, what's the big takeaway here? God's protection is real, even when we can't see it, and his mercy can extend even to our enemies. Chapter 7 brings us to a desperate situation. Samaria is under a severe siege, and the Arameans, well, there's a terrible famine, and the people are starving and resorting to unthinkable acts. And the king of Israel is desperate, and he blames Elisha. But Elisha prophesies, and the very next day, he says, food will be abundant, and the prices will plummet. Well, no one believes him, especially the high-ranking officer who scoffs at the idea. But then there's these 4 lepers, and they're sitting outside the city gate, and they figure, well, we don't have anything to lose. Let's go surrender to the Arameans. And when they get to the Aramean camp, it's deserted. God caused the Arameans to hear the sound of chariots and horses, and it convinced them that the king of Israel had hired a bunch of armies to attack them. So they fled in terror, leaving all of their provisions behind. Well, the lepers bring back the good news to the city. The famine ends just as Elisha had prophesied. And the scoffing officer, well, he got trampled to death by the very crowd at the gate that was rushing in to get the food. What's the main point here? Well, God can bring deliverance from the most desperate situations. While his promises are always true, unbelief can have severe consequences. Finally, in chapter 8, we see two distinct and important narratives here. First, Elisha warns the Shunammite woman, whose son he had previously raised from the dead, to leave Israel due to the coming 7-year famine. When she returns after the famine, she found all of her land confiscated. Through God's providence, the testimony of Gehazi, remember, he's the guy that lied to get the clothes and got the leprosy? Well, he convinces the king to restore her property, plus all the value of the crops that she lost while she was away. It's a beautiful example of God's continued faithfulness to those who are faithful to him. The second part of chapter 8 shifts to politics and prophecy. Elisha travels to Damascus and encounters Hazael, the servant of King Ben-Hadad of Aram. Elisha prophesies that Hazael will become king of Aram and inflict terrible suffering on Israel. Ben-Hadad soon dies, and Hazael indeed takes the throne, fulfilling Elisha's prophecy. The key takeaway from this chapter: God cares for his people, even in the midst of a national upheaval, and God's sovereign over the rise and fall of nations and leaders, and even those who will oppose his people. So 2 Kings 5-8 is a whirlwind of divine intervention. We see God's power over disease, his invincible protection, his miraculous provision, and his sovereignty over history. The common thread: God is active in our lives and of his people and the affairs of nations. He demands our humility and our obedience, and he promises to be faithful. What was your favorite part in these chapters? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the video, share this with other people, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow for more of Set Sail with Grace Harbor. Until then, friends, we'll see ya.